everybody. Welcome to Prime Time at BU Library. Prime Time at BU Library's mission is to encourage lifelong learning beyond the classroom for faculty, students, and staff through its presentations, which are a collaboration of many different offices around campus with the Friends of the BU Library. Next week on Tuesday, the 26th, Steve Whiting will be sharing a timely topic for faculty, redesigning courses for online, lessons learned moving an Introduction to Technology course online. And next Thursday, in celebration of National Poetry Month, Angela Shannon from the English Department, Mark Rhodes from the Music Department, Julia Moen from the Social Work Department, and Will Koehler from the Library will be sharing their favorite poetry at prime time, which is this time slot. And today, we welcome Pamela Erwin and some of her interim students who will discuss their study abroad in Ireland entitled Reconciliation. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. So at this time, we welcome Pamela.
Good morning. You may have caught the movie reference with the title, and so if I can figure out what we're going to do, we're going to start with this clip. This clip became the mantra for our trip, I think.
We'll reach the cliffs by dawn. Why are you doing that?
Making sure nobody's follow us.
That would be inconceivable. Stop doing that. We can all relax. It's almost over.
You're sure nobody's follow us?
As I told you, it would be absolutely, totally, and in all other ways, inconceivable.
He's climbing the rope. And he's gaining on us.
Inconceivable. He didn't fall? Inconceivable.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
And if you just replace inconceivable with reconciliation, that was kind of a mantra for us the whole month that we were in the Republic of Ireland and in Northern Ireland, because we highlight reconciliation around here a lot, but what we discovered in our 3.5 weeks on the island of Ireland was that there are a whole lot of different ways of understanding reconciliation. And so we want to talk with you about some of those today. So again, pardon me as I figure out what I'm doing. From the beginning, thank you. Christian Collins Wynn and I took 20 students to Ireland in January. That trip was the beginning of about a 2-year process in which he and I wanted to collaborate on a course together where we took students to experience and study culture and the relationship of church to culture. And when we first talked to Vincent Peters in off-campus studies about doing something like that, he recommended immediately that we go to Ireland, because with the two Irelands we had a real strong place for us to go and visit and look at the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. And so we found as we went there that the two Irelands offered for us a kaleidoscope of images, the best of culture, the goodness of the church, but also the very worst. This is not the very worst. I forgot to hit the button. So this is a group of students. This is the best and the very worst. This is a bombing that happened just this month, where a Catholic paramilitary group intentionally bombed the car, and inside the car was a 25-year-old Catholic police officer. So the violence continues, even though there has been an established peace. So what we discovered was that there is incredible grace and beauty alongside absurdity and the recognition of human potential for violence and horror. Christian and I have experience in studying reconciliation. He has experience in studying in the Balkans. My undergraduate years were spent studying racism and slavery in the South. So we had a commitment to reconciliation to begin with, and then we brought to Ireland all that we have experienced here as we have a focus on reconciliation. So we're going to share with you some about reconciliation and what we're learning or what we've been learning. And as we talk about that, I wanted to highlight for you a book that has been influential for me, has nothing much to do with the troubles in Northern Ireland, but it's a book by Mary Clark Moschella called Pastoral Ethnography. And in it she highlights how believers really need to see themselves as cultural ethnographers. And two things that she highlights is, as pastoral ethnographers, we need to be busy looking for the familiar strange and the strange familiar. That is, looking for the strange in situations that are familiar and looking for the familiar in situations that are strange. And we discovered, at least I discovered in Ireland, that there was a lot of both. That in Ireland there were people who looked like us, but they weren't. There were people who spoke our language, but we couldn't understand them, and they couldn't understand us. And these are road signs that give you the first glimpse of the differences between the two countries. The top set of road signs are road signs from Northern Ireland, the bottom from the Republic of Ireland. And when you take the road from the south and go north, or vice versa, you don't know when you leave one country and enter the next unless you're really aware. The way that you know that you have gone from one country to the next, there's no welcome signs, is that the road signs change. And in the south you have Gaelic and English, in the north only English. And you go from, in the south it's kilometers, and in the north it's miles per hour. So the speed limit changes. And that's how you know you've entered a different country. The people look like us, they look like each other. We couldn't tell them apart, the differences, the other groups, but they knew the groups, and they knew the difference, and they knew how to tell them apart. The schools in Northern Ireland, the public schools, 95% of them are segregated, Catholic and Protestant. Can you tell the difference? They can tell the difference. The colors often are the way to tell the difference, but they know the difference. A key point here that I learned about reconciliation, even more than I did know before, was that peace does not equal reconciliation. Peace can often mean starkly drawn divisions. There are 13 miles of walls in Belfast, a city about the size of St. Paul. 13 miles of walls. Some of those walls, most of them, are 25 to 32 feet high. Most of those walls were built since the 1998 peace accords. So it's to maintain peace, to keep the peace between the differing groups. It's necessary to segregate and to build peace walls in order to diminish the violence. This is somebody's back patio off their house. This is the peace wall. It's 32 feet high. And this is their patio, barricaded to keep the petrol bombs off their patio. And that's the way they live daily. And on the other side of the wall are homes like those as well. So it's not just one side. Another way they know the difference is by the colors. So green means Irish and Catholic. Orange means Protestant. And English or British descent. The red, white, and blue colors represent the United Kingdom or the country of Northern Ireland. And if you see in Northern Ireland, if you see this Irish flag, it also represents a call for a united Ireland. So you see that, and it's a symbol, immediate symbol, for a desire to have a united Ireland. There are 32 counties on the island. The 6 northern counties are Northern Ireland. And when you go into the neighborhoods, you can tell there are murals everywhere, beautiful murals but they all depict something about a version of history. And again, by the colors and the symbols and the slogans, you can tell what kind of neighborhood that you're entering, whether it's Catholic or Protestant. But for a visitor, you have to know those things or you don't know where you're going. Another way is the newspapers. I learned this, one of our friends over there said you have to pay attention and look at what newspapers people are reading, and then you'll know which side they're supporting. So all of these little things. A not so little thing is the sports teams. Sports teams, my granddaughter Sierra went and she bought in Derry, which is a Catholic, mostly Catholic city, she bought the Celtic football club jersey. And I had to quickly tell her, you can wear it in Derry, but you can't wear it anywhere else because it's a symbol of wanting a united Ireland. There's a lot of violence associated with the sports teams. Sometimes people are bombed or beaten and murdered out of mourning because somebody's team lost. But what's really bizarre to me is just recently somebody was murdered because people were celebrating that their team had won. Tragic. People know the difference by the political parties that people are affiliated with. So again, the colors matter. So the greens and orange represent Catholic, and what is there, Republican, because Republic of Ireland, Republican. This is actually red. It doesn't look very red, but the red and blue represents Unionist, which is not we had to figure that out, that it's not the Union of the island, but it represents the Union Jack, so British and United Kingdom. Again, these are political leaders. You may be familiar with some of these faces. Jerry Adams, who during the Troubles led the IRA, the Irish Republican Army. Many consider him a terrorist. He's now a member. Well, it's a long history. He was a member of the Parliament in the Northern Ireland, but while we were there, the government in the Republic of Ireland dissolved, and they have a new government, and he now represents a county in the Republic of Ireland. So he is back and forth in both countries. This is Ian Paisley, a fundamentalist Christian, and these two were the leaders during the Troubles of the two major factions. They look real friendly, warm people, don't they? This is Martin Muyskens and Peter Robinson. Peter Robinson is the first minister of Northern Ireland, which is the equivalent of our president, and he is an evangelical Protestant. He attended his first Catholic Mass 2 weeks ago when he attended the Mass of the Irish policeman that was murdered. That was a first for him. This is Martin Muyskens, who was also a member of the IRA, now a member of Sinn Féin political party, and he is the deputy first minister. So they are serving together in leading the government of Northern Ireland. An interesting thing about these guys and the guys that they serve with, they don't report to Westminster. Westminster is where the Northern Ireland government reports to, where they go and enact laws, and they refuse to sit, even though they have been elected officials there. So, a last point that I wanted to make before I turn it over to the students is the one thing that we did figure out was that it's a complicated history, and our objectivity gave us an opportunity to observe things and learn some things that I think was good for us, at least at first. And one of the things that the students wanted me to make sure that I told you was a little bit about the history, just so you can understand some of the things we share. This complicated history is a 700-plus year history of British dominance and control on the island, from the time the Pope gave Ireland to the then Catholic King of England. And it's a political history that's been fractured by war and oppression and violence. And that political history is so intertwined with the religious history it's almost impossible to separate it. So if you want to explore what the church is doing, you have to look at the political history. So here's my last thought. A culture cannot escape its history. It is forever ingrained in the life of the people of that culture. And if you run from it or try to deny that history or pretend it's something different than what it is, it only brings further harm to those people. But if the people are able to acknowledge the history for what it is, true healing and reconciliation can begin to happen. But then, even then, you can't escape the history, and it's a long journey. So I'm going to turn it over to my buddy Tony, and he's going to share with you.
Thanks, Pamela. Good morning, I'm Tony Blankhurst. Excuse me. I'm a sophomore biology student, and so I was kind of the black sheep of the trip, so to say. Because the Cox, they're all PTS majors, youth majors. So, but I got to go along, and it was really interesting. First of all, I was very welcome in the community of the trip itself, but I was able to learn some interesting things, thinking from my scientific, so to say, point of view. And first of all, was that the division in what is called sectarianism, is this division she's been talking about, is caused and perpetuated by systems on both sides. Both sides have systems. And because of this, no one really takes the blame for it or responsibility. If you talk to anyone, they'll be like, yeah, I'm not sectarianism, you know, we established peace, that's over. You know, so there's blame shifting. And also, while it was going on, they blamed it on the mad dogs, or kind of the people that were the generals of the IRA, or the different warring groups. And so they're like, no, that's not me, that's just that general. And so there was no acceptance of responsibility, so there's no working towards peace. So this is the pyramid that one of the speakers gave to us in one of our sections. And it kind of just shows the connection between this system. So you start at the bottom with the ordinary decent citizen, like you or me. That's at the bottom, just maybe goes to church, goes to school, doesn't think much of it. Move up to the institutions with power, that would be like your churches, sports teams, different things like that. Political parties, Sinn Féin, you guys know what political parties are, paramilitaries, and then the mad dogs at the top, or the generals, the terrorist, crazy people. And then there's kind of the connections. So starting at the ordinary decent citizen, ignorance, fear, comments, apathy, that kind of thing that you're hearing from your parents or other people in the community. So that ties you with the institutions with power. So those are churches, schools, sports, things like that. Political parties supply the paramilitary with language, ideals, and funds. So that's like speaking negatively about them, driving division in that way. And then finally, the paramilitaries supplying those mad dogs with the training, weapons, and ideas. So that's pretty obvious when we get to that point, how they can arise. So as you see, like, it's obviously not a direct connection, and I'm not trying to say that the ordinary decent citizens are 100% to blame, but it's just that idea of the system that they think if you just get rid of those mad dogs at the top, that it's all going to go away. But it's the whole system that's building that. And so even if you get rid of them, the pyramid's going to grow a new top. You know, it's bound to happen. So that was just a really interesting thought for me. And another thing that was really stood out to me that was a common theme among the speakers was how young they felt that sectarianism started. And this was specifically one speaker that said that he was working to reconcile old mad dogs, or the leaders of those paramilitary groups. And he said that a common thing he heard from them was that they learned it in Sunday school, their sectarianism. And that just really got me thinking about what I've been learning and what I learned in Sunday school, so to say, and that kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting. And also their schools are segregated by religion, which is kind of what Pamela was talking about there, how they're so separated. And so for me, this trip made me ask a lot of questions of myself. It was really kind of a reflective time. We had to journal a lot. And so I was just thinking about what systems we have in the States. I'm not really going to give you guys any answers, but that's okay. I think it's good for you to reflect on it yourself. But one quote that someone said about Northern Ireland, so this is not American necessarily, but he said, "You are sectarian just because you're part of the system in Northern Ireland. There's just no escaping it. No matter where you go, you have to be." So, like I was saying earlier, what messages was I sent in Sunday school? You know, was I told that we're supposed to love God and people, or was it a hatred and division, like you're different because you do this? You know, what are we teaching? And also, kind of had an interesting picture up here, but one man was talking about the walls kind of that we have in America. Obviously we don't have walls, like she's talking about 13 miles of walls. but they're less subtle here, And he was saying that the idols or the walls that are the hardest to remove are the internalized ones that you can't see. So even though we might have those physical walls removed, they're still there. So this trip really opened up my eyes to the idea of systems and systems thinking, and I'm just more aware of them now, and so that was a great outcome for me. So it's time for my brother Ben.
Hello, my name is Ben Woodis. I am a youth ministry and biblical and theological studies major, and I am going to talk a little bit about the church's history. The church, I don't know, when I think of the church, I get excited because I feel like that's the one institution that will actually make a difference, because it's depending on something bigger than itself. But Ireland's history and the role that the church has played there, being there for, in one way or another, for over 1,500 years, hasn't obviously shown that in its history. The troubles kind of stemmed out of things such as what church you belong to, what political group you adhere to. And the role that the church played in that wasn't necessarily violent, but the language that they used was either violent or didn't condemn the acts that were being done in the first place. Just something that really stuck out to me was this idea of using violent language and the way that that influences people. Like what Tony's talking about, that it's all a part of a system that while they may not be physically throwing punches, shooting guns, things of that nature, they were supplying the ammunition in the language that they used. I think Ireland is a prime example of, this. I feel like I've heard churches today here in the U.S. that use this kind of divisive language. We don't really have a history necessarily so closely tied with the church and violent acts of war and things of that nature. But like what Pamela was saying, we need to consider our history, and we need to consider what it is that can actually come out of using this kind of language, what can actually come out of saying these kinds of things, that it's not just for a powerful message on Sunday, but it's actually shaping the way that we live and interact even with those that are not like us. So here I kind of draw some attention to the concept of us and them, that as Christians, that we would somehow be better than those that are not Christians, that as believers that we're somehow more right than others. In a way, it says that we're the better human being, but it also says that someone else is a lesser human being, or not human at all. The role of the church has been something that's been a part of the problem, but there are obviously also ministries that we're seeing now that are stepping up, that are being the hands and feet of Christ, that are actually doing something to be a part of the solution in this. Something that I would just draw your attention to is, where do we say that love is no more? Where do we say that we can only love so far, that because you act a certain way, because you live a certain way, that you are no longer lovable? Because you're a Catholic and I'm a Protestant, I can no longer love you. The issues in Ireland that I found extremely profound were that, not to diminish the injustice of racism, but these people are both white, and they're still drawing divisions between them, that it goes far deeper than just what color your skin is. It goes to, what do you do, how do you live, what do you believe in, and somehow drawing things in that we can still divide and say that I'm better than you, you're not as good as me. Either way, the role of the church, using divisive language and not speaking up at all, the enemy wins in that. The church doesn't win, society doesn't win, and if we're truly going to be people of reconciliation, I think that's something that definitely has to change. Something that really stuck out to me from this trip was just considering who is the least among us here in the U.S., who is the person that we say, you don't belong here, that you're not welcome, that you don't deserve to be loved. Do we just, like Micah 6:8, do we just say this without really considering what justice can look like? Some of the things that really got my attention when we were at a retreat center there was considering the plight of Muslims in America. Post September 11th, they don't get a good rap. Yet they're still an image bearer, they're still a human being, God still loves them, and what should we do in that? Immigrants, those that, are new to this country, we're not excluded from this whole concept of these divisions, of treating people in an inhumane way. And these are just some examples that really stuck out to me. But like Tony was saying, I think it's really up for you to really take stock of what are the areas in your own life that maybe you're being a part of the problem, but also how can you be a part of the solution in that? How are we breaking down the walls instead of building them up? We're a part of the upside-down kingdom. This picture is kind of, I don't know, it's upside down, obviously. And I think that it's a sweet image, though, in the sense that why do we love people that are not like us? Why do we care for those that don't care for us? Why do we stand up for those that don't stand up for us? I think hopefully it's because we're living for something more than ourselves, that we're using an example that's not based on each other, but it's based on the one that created us. I think that reconciliation and the steps that people are taking in Ireland is an absolutely beautiful picture of our Creator and what He's doing to all of us in reconciling us unto Himself. I think it's just a sweet example of how we can be a part of the solution and moving more towards that, and not just letting it be based on, well, they did this to us, so we're going to retaliate to that. They called us this, so we're going to call them that. It's little things. It starts with us. It starts with our own relationships. And it's something that you can never get too small in what you're doing. We can dream big, but you have to take a step somewhere along the way to actually move out into that and allow that to become a posture of how you live your life. If reconciliation is not at the core of what you're about, you're not going to do that. I'm going to invite Hannah up to share a little more.
I'm Hannah Koehler. I'm a youth ministry major. I'm a senior. And so after going on this trip, and while I was on this trip, I was just burdened by all of the divisions, the walls that we saw, that only 5% of youth go to both a mixed school that are both Protestant and Catholic. And so for me, I was like, what can we do to start to form those relationships? Because how can we bring both Protestants and Catholics together into community and start to see the human in the other person, to start to see that they both have things that they have in common. And so let's go back. Yeah. And so while we were on the trip, we had a couple of different ministries, organizations share with us how they are bringing people together, how they're bringing youth together to kind of, sectarianism is going to happen, it's going to exist, because you can't escape from the system of what Tony was saying, but how to start that reconciliation through a relationship. And so one of the organizations that shared with us was Peace Players International. And Peace Players International is doing something simple as playing basketball together. Basketball is a neutral sport, and so there's not any harm within or violence coming out of that. Also, it's just they're about developing leaders. They're about just creating that space for conversations to happen, to if a fight ends up happening while they're playing basketball, they're able to talk about that. Why are you fighting? Is it because of the other, because of what has been happening, of the sectarianism involved? And also just changing perceptions of the other, of Protestants and Catholics, just being able to see like, oh, we actually really both like to play basketball. And so it's something that we have in common, instead of just seeing all the divisions within that. And it's about bridging divides, developing leaders and changing perceptions. The next organization that we had talked to was Culture Crosslinks. And Culture Crosslinks is about enabling youth to become agents with change within their own communities, and that's by just exploring community relations, to see a safe place, of just a positive place where they can come together. And they do this through music and dance and drama, of just exploring something that they both would really enjoy, and see that, again, just seeing the common thing that they have in each other. And through that process, over that, that year, whatever, that they can become friends. And 174 Trust is also just about building peace and promoting reconciliation. Their kind of mission is tackling injustice, bringing hope, and sharing God's love with a broken world through bringing cross communities. And so they have different activities that they have, which is like a Young Cares, which is an adventure camp. They go canoeing. They run marathons or half marathons together. They have youth group time. They have preschool play groups. Start with the little ones. They have adult clubs, and they also have disability groups for the youth, to just start having those relationships come together. And one thing that I think Peace Players, the woman that spoke to us there, was saying, children who learn to play together can learn to live together. And that really stuck with me, that once they learn that they can play together, that it's safe, that the other person is not the bad person, that it's no longer us and them, but it's a togetherness, that will go back into their communities, and that will start to shape and form their worldview, and start the process of reconciliation. So, something that has brought me hope on the trip. And now I'm going to invite Emily to come share with us.
Okay. Hi, I'm Emily Muyskens. I'm another black sheep of the trip. Macomb major, not a youth man, rec, BTS major, but. So before going to Ireland, I was kind of sick of the term reconciliation. I heard a lot about it, but I never really saw it or understood it. And so I just kind of ignored it and pushed it aside. And it wasn't until I got there and started speaking with the people there and getting to know them that I began to understand reconciliation as a lifestyle, which that also sounds a little bit cliche and theological, but the truth is that in everything that we do and in everything that we say, we are either acting as reconcilers or as dividers. And something as simple as getting coffee with someone or doing your homework or remembering a person's name for the next time you see them in the hallway can reconcile and heal and bring peace. But then there's that word peace, again, like Pamela had mentioned. Where does that fit in to reconciliation? Are they the same thing? And for a while, I thought that reconciliation and peace were synonymous. But then we saw the peace walls, which I'm bringing up again. And it seems like such an oxymoron, peace, walls. And there's such a tension there. But then one of the people that we spoke with in Ireland said that reconciliation is a journey where peace is not an end goal, but a starting place. Oh, and there's the peace wall again. And when the peace walls are viewed in this light, they do seem to be a starting place. They give the people of Northern Ireland a physical reminder of the need for peace. They give them physical bricks and fences and barbed wire that need to be torn down. And in this sense, the peace walls are peace walls, as strange as it seems. So, if reconciliation is a lifestyle, and if peace is a starting place for reconciliation, what does this mean we should do? Well, a theme that came up in almost every conversation we had was hospitality and generosity in spirit. And both Protestants and Catholics recognized that Bible beating and proselytizing was not an effective way to break down walls, but that a welcoming, warm spirit that serves others and seeks to meet their daily needs is the key to reconciling. And so Jeremy Gardner, who we got to know at the Corrymeela Community Centre in Northern Ireland, told us about the time when he got a position in Northern Ireland as the youth pastor of a large Protestant church. And the church was in a Protestant community, and there was also a Catholic church in the middle of this Protestant community. And the Protestants would frequently throw paint bombs at this Catholic church and graffiti and trash it, just saying that they aren't welcome there. And so Jeremy got in his head that, well, it would be a great way to just show some kindness to the Catholics in this community, that we aren't trying to kick them out if we went and cleaned out their church after this act. So he and the kids in his youth group went and they cleaned out the church, but little did they know how big of a deal this would be. They were met by the media, and I'm talking like BBC, like big media sources, and because the media couldn't understand why on earth why Protestants would help Catholics, it didn't make sense. And after a while, the church was hit again, and Jeremy and his youth group went again and handed out roses to the Catholics as they left Mass. And again, people couldn't understand why this was happening, from the media to the leaders of the IRA and all the other paramilitary groups. It didn't make sense. But through these seemingly simple acts of kindness, sectarianism was rocked. It was shaken at its... Oh, I forgot to... Strange. There they are, cleaning out the church. Okay. But, yeah, sectarianism was shaken at its foundation, and that's what a lifestyle of reconciliation does. It doesn't take a pair of shears to the division, seeking to cut it off with one fell swoop of ingenuity, but it digs at the root of the divide. It kills it where it began. And although this process may be longer and more tedious, it's the only way that true reconciliation can take place. So our daily actions and words have the ability to reconcile with incredible force that I didn't realize before going on this trip. So we can't really view reconciliation as a theological concept, but as an everyday verb, something we engage in, whether we realize it or not, and something that is far simpler than we often make it out to be. So that's kind of our thoughts on reconciliation and the trip. If there's any questions, we can take them. Otherwise, you can go to class.
I think we have a couple minutes for questions. If you have questions for these students, they would love to hear them. You have a question? You were on the trip.
No.
So what's your question? What was the most important point that they learned? Anybody in particular? You want Tony to answer that question, I know. What was the most important point that you learned, Tony?
The most important? I think it's what I talked about, to be honest. I don't know, the thought of systems and just that realization of the power that they had in this warring system.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions? Thank you.
Thanks for coming, guys.